What up, what up, what up, what up? How you doing? I'm good, thank you for asking. One of my clients asked last night what I believe or what my thoughts are on a ketogenic diet for an athlete versus a paleo diet for an athlete when the goal of the athlete is to lose body fat, keep muscle or gain muscle, and still be an athlete. First, you have to dissect the question, right? Because the paleo diet refers to the nutrition habits of Paleolithic man, our ancestors, who were hunter-gatherers, and so that, depending on the region you're in, let's say generally, that's going to be an animal meat, an animal product, bones, brains, hearts, intestines, fat. It's going to be surrounded or based on animal, and then typically grazing on available vegetation in the meantime. So while you're hunting or fishing or doing all these things, you might come across some land that there's not many animals at that given time, and you need to eat vegetation. Or during the winter, if you're in an area where animals hibernate, they're harder to hunt, you would have to have some vegetation in the meantime to make up for that. But it's based on animal products, and in the paleo diet there is no sugar, no wheat-based products, no flour, no soy, no corn, no grains at all, limited dairy, and the only dairy permitted would be no sugar, full fat, not screwed with. Basically, paleo is unprocessed food. If you have to process it to eat it, then it's not what we would eat. And even meats that we cook today, a healthy, real, wild animal and a human that's been eating humanly their whole life, you can eat raw animals a lot of the time, but with modern day and the diseases and the most of the meats we get aren't as wild and healthy as we would hope, you gotta cook it up because you can get very sick. So realize that before man created fire, man ate raw animal, and that was just normal. So yeah, paleo is just anything that's vegetables, fruit, meats, nuts, seeds, and then sweet potatoes are generally allowed in paleo diet, and that's about it. No white potatoes, no rices, no grains of any sort, and it's just very cut and dry, very simple. But within paleo itself, you could have a fruitarian. A person who eats only fruit is still technically paleo. You could have a carnivore. You could have a vegan, a vegetarian. They're all paleo if they're staying away from the no's in paleo. So ketogenic is a subset of paleo. Ketogenic, from the name, means ketogenic, creating ketones, generating ketones in the body. And the way you generate ketones in the body is you have relatively no glucose circulating in the blood, and instead you have a lot of fatty acids from dietary fat intake that break down into ketones, and then we use the ketones as energy. So to have a ketogenic diet, you have some meat at basically every meal and lots of fat. So the ratio is typically or percentage is usually 85, or let's say 70 to 85% fat in dietary fat. So eating most of your food is fat, and then 15 to 30% protein. And the reason you need the fat so high is because if you're having no carbohydrates, and glucose would be the energy source from carbohydrates that your muscles, your brain, and everything uses to be able to function, if you cut that out, you have to replace it with fatty acids and ketones, or you just have no energy. If you just cut out carbs and you don't eat enough of the other energy source, then you're just on a low-calorie diet, and those never work long-term. So you would have to have high fat. And why not just high protein without high fat is because protein breaks down in amino acids, and they're a tool, they're a building block, proteins are like workers. They handle all the work, while fatty acids are the ingredients needed to do the work. So without the ingredients, you just got a bunch of workers. Let's say you got construction workers with no hammers, no nails, no wood, and they're just sitting around. They got nothing to do. So you have to have the fat. The fat is the link between what protein can do in the body. And if you cut out glucose, you have those tools aren't available. If you don't replace them with the other ingredients to get the job done, which would be fatty acids, then you can't function. So in a ketogenic diet, you have super high fat, moderate protein. Well, it might be high to some people, but for anybody who's like familiar with bodybuilding diets, it would be kind of low protein. And then paleo is just anything that's, the easy way to say it is anything that's not processed, and no grains, no sugar, which basically have to be processed for us to eat anyway. So no processed foods, and as real and as fresh as possible. So they're not different diets, just paleo has way more diversity within the name than ketogenic is a lot more specific. And in paleo you would have to define what kind of paleo are you eating for it to be good or bad for an athlete. So we've established what paleo and ketogenic is. Now for the athlete, which one's better? It always depends on the person. I know that answer sucks, but it's just true. Different people have different insulin sensitivities, so different amount of carbohydrates are going to affect different amount of fat gain or fat loss in different people. So what is the sport they're playing? How often are they training? What are the training sessions like? Those are all going to factor into what kind of food you would benefit from. Talking about ketogenic first, ketogenic is the way humans can survive perfectly. You get enough ketones, the brain runs fine. There's some studies that are showing the brain runs better. It's needs more research. It's in the stages. There's endurance athletes and I think bodybuilders that are taking on this ketogenic diet and logging results, doing so clinically in studies with experts watching. But I think it's new enough where not everybody should just jump on this ketogenic diet if they're athletes and expect to do so well. We have to know more about it, more about ratios. And because this is specifically a question about athletes, that's what we're talking about right now. So though ketogenic diet may be super, super healthy for the average individual who's not the athlete, if you're the athlete, let's say you're training 2, 3, 4 times a day, you're training really hard for your sport, your muscles are going to need to be replenished from the glycogen stores that they're burning up during their sport. So you're going to need probably some carbohydrate, more so than a person who's not training like you do as an athlete. So how much carbohydrate do you have? What kind of carbohydrate do you have? This is where you have to test and observe and adjust. If your goal is to lose fat, start at a certain amount of carbohydrates, and if you're not losing fat, lower that amount of carbohydrates. More specifically, take your carbohydrate intake immediately before and after workouts and don't eat them outside of the workouts in your downtime. Because if you take them right before and right after your workout, when you waste your muscles, they are going to be signaling the insulin that secretes when you eat carbohydrates to deliver insulin to those, or glucose to those muscles, so that the muscles can replenish their glycogen stores for the next workout. So if you're constantly beating those muscles down, you can handle more carbohydrates in general than if you're just chilling. Okay, so what kind of carbohydrates? I am a proponent of white rice because white rice, as opposed to most other grains, doesn't have high phytic acid content, doesn't have the side effects that a lot of plants and grains have that gunk up your digestive system, mess up your GI tract, your gut lining, all these things. It's generally just carbohydrate. And you're getting a shot of glucose and you're getting an insulin spike, but you're not getting these potentially harmful side effects that come with a lot of grain products and wheat products. So it's a clean carbohydrate source compared to the others. Sweet potato seems to be good for a lot of people. Some people react poorly. If you've got a sensitive digestive system like I do, anything with any kind of sugar, fructose, or any ose in it might respond negatively in your body. So you've just got to test and retest. And so to answer the question, ketogenic, probably not quite. Great diet for health, might not be the best diet for the athlete questioning. Paleo diet, absolutely, plus white rice. And then within that, you gotta track your carbohydrate intake. You can't just haphazardly eat, because that which you don't measure you can't change. So you have to measure it, and then you can adjust accordingly. If you're losing muscle, maybe you bring in more protein, or maybe you're not having enough carbohydrate, so your insulin, you don't have enough insulin driving nutrients to the muscle around your workout times. If you're not losing any fat, you're gonna have to cut down the carbohydrate sources. You just gotta play with it and figure it out. But the typical athlete will want to eat very clean and add in white rice if their goal is to keep gaining muscle, and then just toy with how they eat that white rice. Again, around workouts, some people with the carb night or carb backloading, John Kiefer's system, you would eat, no carbs throughout the day. You'd eat it at night. You'd eat your white rice after workouts and like closer to bed, and replenish glycogen stores for the next day, while remaining ketogenic throughout the first 3/4 of the day. That works too. So you gotta experiment and play with it. But I would say ketogenic, real ketogenic diet, truly ketogenic, most athletes are going to struggle with off the bat based on what I can offer. I'm not an expert on ketogenic diets, so I can't answer that with certainty and say, oh, you'll either do great or you won't, because that's up to the individual to figure out. I'll add links below this video to sources about ketogenic diet and things like that that you can look further into. But with my experience personally, I can't add anything more than that. Alright? We'll talk to you soon. Later on.